Food for thought, week 7. We got another crazy Monday. There's 2 Monday Night Football games, so maybe we'll get into that a little bit. World Series are right around the corner. Basketball starts tomorrow. Pretty soon, college hoops will be in full swing as well. The WNBA just wrapped up. So just a busy time, and we're here. It's Monday afternoon. It's food for thought. We hope you like hitting the reset button with us, go over a little bit of what we saw this weekend, and we'll take a little bit of a look towards week 8. What's going on, Will Priester? Good to see you again, man.
Yeah, man, for sure. Glad to be here. Glad to hop in this thing with you. And I think we saw a lot of, from a real life perspective, Luch, and a DFS perspective, we saw a lot of interesting things yet again. My boy, I don't know if he's listening yet, Luch. I'm going to try to hold this one for him. My boy, I got to know Chill. Hit me up on X and sent me some interesting, an interesting stat, if you will. And so it was very interesting. We saw a lot of big games this weekend, Luch, I thought, in terms of seeding, and just kind of maybe trying to demonstrate where certain teams ranked on the power rankings, if you will. And it was a very interesting week, and I'm really excited to come on and talk you through it. And let me just say, I'm going to go ahead and get the Panthers out of the way. Boy, do we suck. Boy, do we suck. And just pour one out for the Carolina Panthers yet again this season. I'm already on the next season, Luke. That's how rough this thing is. I mean, we're 8 weeks in, and we're just toast.
All right, Chief. Let me get the Titans out of the way real quick. Boy, do we suck. Boy, do we suck. Pour one out for my Titans. I'm looking at Shitter Sanders YouTube highlights already. It's October. Things aren't good. We will just get that out of the way. Boy, do our favorite teams on this show stink.
We're pitiful.
We're pitiful. We're pathetic. We're the worst. But it's okay. We pick ourselves up, and we had a ton of other action with quality football programs to talk about. And I'm going to get these reads out of the way so I don't forget about it. So thanks for sticking with us. I know Chief is going to drum up. Maybe he'll drum up the quick 45-second rundown that you are so good at when I'm done with this. You get yourself ready for that because, man, did we have some really good games? We had that NFC North battle with Minnesota and Detroit, which didn't disappoint. A couple of other games as a whole that disappointed that maybe I thought there'd be some more points, but we'll get to that soon. Before we get to Chiefs quick 45 seconds or whatever we could call it so we don't get copyright infringement stuff with ESPN, I keep thinking of Chris Berman and the whoop. You got to add a couple whoops in there, Chief, or make a different noise. I don't really know.
Good. Go. I'll cut it off right there.
Chris Berman was so elite at what he did, 15, 20 years ago, including the home run derby, by the way. I love the back. I mean, that was can't beat those days. I just envisioned Mark McGwire at Fenway, like those derby days, and Berman going back. Okay. Anyway, speaking of back, I'm backpedaling here. RG Combo Lite, introducing our Combo Lite package. It's our newest product that gives you the power of simulation for a fraction of the price of other tools. Competitors charge hundreds a month for their sim products. Combo Lite, just $39.99, and it includes our SimLabs lineup building tool and content from some of your favorite DFS analysts. Combo Lite doesn't limit you to one sport. You get the core 4 major sports: MLB, NFL, NBA, and PGA. You won't find a more cost-effective option anywhere. Splash Sports. They're available in 34 states. They're leading the way in peer-to-peer fantasy and betting contests. Join the action and take on our RG experts at splashsports.com/RotoGrinders. Use promo code ROTO10, that's ROTO 10, to redeem $10 in credits after you enter your first contest. And also a big shout out to all of you who have participated in the RG Listener League. I'll have to dig up and see who won yesterday, but don't forget each week to join the RG Listener League, play alongside other viewers as well as your favorite host right here for a chance to win a month of RG Combo Premium. Check the description in the video for an invite to the contest when it goes live every Wednesday. Without further ado, why don't you give us a little Chief rundown of what happened in Sunday NFL football?
Yeah, we're just going to skip over Thursday and skip over the London game. Those were slobber knockers in favor of one side. However, we did see a beautiful Lions-Vikings game. Lions come out victorious 31-29 after being down late in the fourth quarter. Buffalo Bills trounced on the Titans. We've already talked about that. Had a real tight game between the Colts and the Dolphins, but those two teams were kind of going nowhere fast. Seahawks come out victorious over the Atlanta Falcons. Huge win for the Seahawks, especially with San Francisco going down to the Chiefs 28-18. We look now, obviously early in the season, still plenty of time left. Seahawks in the driver's seat of the NFC West at 4-3. 49ers are at 3-4. Under 500 and injuries galore piling up on that team. I think we will talk about that momentarily. Obviously, we get up to another tight game. Texans-Packers. Packers victorious 24-22. Luch and myself talked about this last week. Could the NFC North get 4 teams in? If the season ended today, they sure would. Lions 5-1, Vikings 5-1, Packers 5-2. Bears were on the bye, but Bears are 4-2. Another big game this week in terms of the division, not by score. We saw the Eagles face the Giants. Eagles come out, hang a 28 spot. Giants only able to muster up 3 points at home, Luch. Eagles and Commanders, who clearly beat down my Panthers at 40-7, and that's with Marcus Mariota coming in to do most of the heavy lifting. How about the Commanders coming out 40-7? Eagles win 28-3, and then of course we talked about the big one there. Chiefs over 49ers 28-18. How about Patrick Mahomes getting it done? Less than 200 yards passing. Wouldn't have guessed they scored 28 if you told me right now he threw for slightly over 150 yards against that defense. And then of course we close this thing out. Russell Wilson comes back Sunday night. Aaron Rodgers on the other side. And the Steelers come out victorious at home 37-15. Boy, my Aaron Rodgers takes are starting to look really good as we continue to move through this season. Caught a really good stat for my boy. I got no chill. Did you know that the Jets are 2-5? And last year at this point, I think they were 4-3 or 4-2. It was something like that. Jets have actually gotten worse with Aaron Rodgers at quarterback in terms of record, comparing year over year. And Luch, that is our rundown from Sunday.
There's so much quality and non-quality content on the good old X, but one tweet that made me laugh is that Devontae Adams went from a 2-4 team to another 2-4 or 2-5 team now, except he's with the homies now. So
yeah,
he's just losing with his buddies now.
Yeah.
Trey Wingo also tweeted or X'd. I can't call it X'd. He tweeted. It's always going to be tweeted. Trey Wingo tweeted that the Jets have only 2 games left on the remaining schedule against teams that currently have a winning record, and they leave the Eastern time zone only once for the rest of the regular season. But boy, do they have some work to do. Devontae Adams still can't block anybody up front in the trenches, so he's not the end-all, be-all. Let's fix everything here. It's a big issue for them as well. Hey, hats off to Pittsburgh, just mopping the floor, just taking care of business. And I know Russ wasn't uber efficient, but man, there were some really freezing cold takes from the first quarter of that game when it didn't look all that well. But at the end of the day, he took care of the football, 2 tutties, got George Pickens the ball. He can shut up a little bit now, but also he's the biggest playmaker on that team. So I do have to, I'm not totally saying he's full-blown diva mode because he is the playmaker on the team, and Russell Wilson got him the ball. And the Jets defense is not a joke, not a walkover, not a pushover, and you got a 30-plus bomb against the New York Jets. So hats off to Pittsburgh. I mean, what a difference a couple of quarters makes. You felt a lot better at the end of that game than you did in the first quarter as a Pittsburgh fan. Yeah,
absolutely. And Luch, speaking of that, in terms of the Steelers, they're leading the division right now at 5-2. Now, clearly, Baltimore plays tonight. As we're recording this podcast, they'll be playing after we're done recording. But they don't have a cakewalk matchup, if you will, Luch. Like this isn't one that they're just going to automatically win. They're going to Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay's shown a propensity to put up points this season. So we'll see how that game goes, and then we'll have a reset here in terms of the standings right now. But standings right now, what do you know? The Buffalo Bills are leading the AFC East. I assume it would be the Dolphins or the Jets at this point. I think at the beginning of the season, Luch, we would have all guessed that, considering that the Bills roster was semi-depleted. But then they go out and make a splash trade here, splash signing, if you want to go and get Amari Cooper. That might actually help this team continue to push the envelope and get a little bit more separation between the Dolphins and the Jets, because right now they are the chased, Luch. They're ahead 3 games, on the Dolphins at 2-4. So I'm very interested to see how this works out. I think they needed a number one, and they kind of got a non-diva receiver to come in there. He's not going to be Stephon Diggs. He's just going to make plays and be quiet. And I think he's going to fit the Bills' culture a little bit more than Diggs did. Obviously, the Chiefs are leading the AFC West 6-0. Steelers leading the North 5-2. Texans still have a stranglehold on the AFC South, and I don't see how anyone actually catches them, Luke. I know the Colts are 4-3, but I think as this season continues to push, Texas should be able to get a little bit more separation. NFC East, Commanders leading 5-2. Eagles right on their tail, though, literally right on their tail at 4-2. Commanders slip up at all, and I think the Eagles, they'd be tied in that division. Seahawks leading the NFC West. Lions and Vikings both 5-1. Obviously, Lions have the tiebreaker right now over the Vikings because of that win yesterday. And Buccaneers are leading the NFC South, with Atlanta going down to Seattle yesterday at 4-2 with the game tonight. Could easily be 4-3 or 5-2 by the time we get back. Or 6-2 or however it will shake out could easily be there. But, Luce, the reason why I brought that up is life comes at you fast, and we're already a third of the way through the season actually now. Like, I know week 4, week 5, we were kind of talking about it like, hey, we're really getting close to a third of the way there. And now we're officially a third of the way there. And, certain teams are starting to show who they really are. And do we think the 49ers are going to come out of this thing? That's something I want to talk about this week. Do we think they're able to get out of this hole? Now, obviously, they're still close in their division, but with the NFC North having so many teams, and if the Falcons and the Buccaneers kind of keep winning alternately, right, the NFC South may even get 2 teams in. And if the 49ers don't make a push here, Luch, we could be going from a dynasty to down in the dumps pretty quickly here. How are you feeling about San Francisco? It feels like the injury bug has caught them tremendously, and they may have to pay the piper here this year.
Yeah, and that's football. I mean, I hate to sound sour, but you really just can't feel for anybody because everyone goes through it every couple of years. And some teams seem like they can't shake it at all. So that was brutal, and that was supposed to be their revenge game against the Chiefs, and just an ugly football game. I mean, Purdy and Mahomes combined for 5 picks, and both teams are dealing with a big shortage of playmakers right now, and it's tough sledding. I mean, Brandon Ayuk got the big payday, and now, unfortunately for him, looks like he's done for the year. Deebo Samuel was sick, and still no word on Christian McCaffrey. And as good as Jordan Mason's been, Chief, and this guy's a football player for sure, and he might even be a top half of the league running back in any system. He runs pretty violently. Yeah, he's not Christian McCaffrey. He doesn't make the defenses honor the same things that Christian McCaffrey would. So they're going through it, and I know defenses will definitely cater to George Kittle, but I think he has, just per his draft capital in the beginning of the season, he's got the biggest ceiling for the rest of the year. Good to see Ricky Pearsall playing football. No one really talking about it, but we'll see what kind of difference
he can provide. Had a couple big catches late in that game, even though it was kind of meaningless. Was out there kind of picking up some stats.
Yep. I mean, and San Francisco did a beautiful job of totally taking Travis Kelce out of the game. It was just ugly, ugly football. And yeah, there's definitely cause for concern, especially with Seattle keeping pace, getting some big wins that maybe some had pegged as losses on their schedule. And of course, Arizona's doing their thing, and LA is trying not to go away, but they've dealt with some injuries in their own right as well. So yeah, I mean, if I'm San Francisco, I'm a little bit concerned, but we'll definitely see what Brock Purdy's made of this year. And I know this was an ugly football game, and the Chiefs are, one of the top 5 defensive units in the team with Spags back there. So just a lot going on with the 49ers, and the Chiefs find a way. It's not always as the script has it written, if you will, but we will see if the Niners can right the ship moving forward. If they have a big time struggling Dallas team coming to the West Coast on prime time next week, followed by Tampa Bay. And then, don't you know it, a game against Seattle on the 17th. And I think there's a bye week sandwich somewhere in between there. A much needed quick bye week coming up for the 49ers to kind of regroup, recollect, and see what's going on. And they're not exactly in a fantastic cap situation, especially after the Ayuk deal, but I'm sure they'll be picking up the phone at the deadline, putting some feelers out there to see if there's any way they can improve that roster moving forward.
Yeah, and the thing is, Luch, rent is due soon for this team. Brock Purdy's got to get paid. They're not going to be able to kick the can down the road much longer with him. So their window, Luch, for a Super Bowl is essentially closing. Where I think people thought it was wide open. It's essentially closing. So I'm very interested to see how they handle it. I'm not completely writing them off. Like, they've shown an ability to be a good football team and one of the better teams in football. But once again, Luch, the injury bug can make fools of us all. And it's definitely it's ravaged this team this season. So another big game, I guess, that we can kind of recap in a little bit more detail. Texans-Packers. Obviously, we saw two young quarterbacks, C.J. Stroud and Jordan Love, kind of duel it out. Packers come out victorious 24-22 at home, by the way. I don't think the Texans have anything to worry about too much. I think their season's still intact. But the Packers getting this win, Luch, I definitely think helped to further cement how we feel about the NFC North. And I think, once again, when we started talking last week, I think at least what I thought the general consensus is that the NFC North is going to be probably the best division in football. And it's sure starting to look that way week to week to week. And at some point, they've all got to beat up on each other. And that started yesterday, obviously, with Lions-Vikings. But they're not playing each other every single week. Obviously, I think we still feel like the Bears are the team on the outside looking in. But if they continue to get non-division wins and still win, can squeeze out, something against the Packers or something against the Vikings or something against the Lions, like if they can kind of get a split with one of these teams and maybe I think they're in the playoffs. I think they're in. Plenty of season left, I know, but the NFC North is starting to look really, really strong. And believe it or not, the NFC East and the NFC South are probably as close to the NFC North in terms of how they might be able to get multiple teams in, just because of the division and how the NFC West has seemingly fallen off a bit. So I think that's interesting. And then kind of the same thing for the NFC, where AFC, excuse me, where we feel like the AFC North is probably the cream of the crop in terms of overall production, and then everybody else is kind of trying to figure it out. I think we feel like the Bengals are going to get a little bit better. The Browns are probably done. Pour another one out again for Deshaun Watson. Luch, look, man, I'm just convinced that whatever happened behind closed doors with him in this thing, his career is done. I think his career is done. And, I don't wish anything on anyone. But, man, since those incidents, Luch, those accusations, he just hasn't been able to get right. And so as a result, I think maybe he spent a little bit too much time away from football. And I think his career is essentially toast unless he's going to be, someone's backup and agree to be a backup. I don't think he'll get a starting job again after this season or after this big contract is out.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned Green Bay. And finally, they're getting everyone healthy. And I know Houston did not have Nico Collins. That's fine. But just still a massive win. And it's not like Houston had nobody. Had Joe Mixon's back and pretty much healthy. You have Stephon Diggs.
Had a great game yesterday. Joe Mixon had a great game yesterday.
Joe Mixon, looked great again. But Green Bay, this NFC North, and we'll talk about Detroit, Minnesota, who I think are great football teams. But I think by a nose, I like the Packers the most, and I feel like all the buzz is around Detroit and Minnesota. But here are the Packers.
For good reason. Detroit almost went to the Super Bowl last year. I think that's a fair buzz.
I think they're all live to get to the NFC title game at a minimum. All three of those teams. Nothing against the Bears. I don't know if they're ready, but
they got a rookie quarterback. I don't expect them to get there. I expect them to get in though if they keep playing well.
But you look at Green Bay and they handled the teams they should have handled, and there are 2 losses. The first one was against the Eagles in another country on opening night. The playing conditions of the field were just outrageous. Very close game. Could have went either way. And then the loss to the Vikings, they came all the way back to make it a game that was a coin flip toward the end. Jordan Love's first game back as well. So, man, they're just 3 very exciting football teams here. And I like Green Bay quite a bit, but they have the rest of their schedule is going to be fun. Of course, they got the Lions twice. They got the Vikings one more time. They got a game at Seattle. They got a game against Miami at the end of November where you would think Tua would be back. They have a game against the banged up 49ers next month as well.
Tua's getting close anyway, I think. So, yeah.
Yep. So it's going to be fun to see how the cards shake out in this conference. But I was just looking at some futures odds, and we talked a little bit about Seattle. They're 40-1 to win the Super Bowl right now, but I do like you get 17-1 on Green Bay right now, and I think you just check some of the boxes, right? A very balanced offense when they're healthy. You have 3 good receivers when they're healthy, and Jaden Reed is kind of the gadget guy. The emergence of Tucker Kraft, and Jared Goff though playing elite football as well. So I don't want to take anything away from Goff or Sam Darnold, who is still looking sharp, and of course, Minnesota came up just short in that one. We could talk about that game a little bit. And listen, 60 points in a 2024 NFL football game is like unheard of. So it lived up to the bill in that sense. Now, what if I told you I think the game could have even been a bit more higher scoring? Listen, I mean, Minnesota settled for 3 field goals in that game. The time of possession was pretty much split down the middle. Both quarterbacks, despite Darnold throwing 1 pick, I mean, Goff was 22 of 25, Darnold 22 of 27. The ground game was pretty much efficient on both sides, but yards per play, Detroit 7, Minnesota almost 7.5. The kicker here is that there just weren't a lot of plays. It was kind of a slow-paced game. I think, what were the numbers here? I think Detroit ran 56 plays to Minnesota's 52, somewhere in that threshold. So,
yeah,
just kind of a slow game, and there's still 60
really late in this game. Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Yep. One of the things I will say about Detroit,
great.
Look, man, they had to go on the road and get that. So it's not like they won 31-29 at home. They had to go on the road and get it, and had to kick a field goal late to get it. So obviously we know that David Montgomery got nicked up in that game. Also, we talked about the injury bug. You mentioned Gibbs. I mean, Gibbs looked good, man. It's amazing. I know running backs seemingly don't get the big paycheck, and they don't really get a lot of the credit anymore. But having 2 really good running backs and a form of thunder and lightning, if you will, it's paid off for this team. And when Montgomery has had to kind of come out of the game or miss a little bit of time, we've seen Gibbs pick up slack during those moments, and vice versa. When they've needed to ride Montgomery late in games and kind of keep Gibbs sidelined and let the workhorse go to work, they've done that. So they've got a good thing going there in Detroit, and clearly they're one of the better teams in football and have been ascending now for 3 seasons. So that the 2 years ago, Luch, we saw them beat the Packers late in the season, right? They said, no, we're not handing them this game. We're going to come out here and play. And then we saw last season, Luch, NFC Championship, and I think they're hungry. I think that taste in their mouth of not getting to the Super Bowl when they had the game seemingly in the bag early on, I think that's fueling their fire. And clearly, like we talked about with San Francisco and those injuries, San Francisco isn't in their class of a football team right now with the injury of their own to basically their best pressure lineman. Yeah. They've lost him. So that's the thing. Like, they're not without, some uncertainty here. It's just they haven't really lost one of their offensive weapons, one of their high-end weapons like Goff or Amon-Ra. Clearly if David Montgomery misses any time, then they still got Gibbs. But, they've got a big injury of their own, and he's not coming back this season, I don't think. So, yeah, man, it's interesting out there this season, and I think it's going to get more interesting down the stretch.
I will say this. I mean, we talk about offensive line on the show a lot. Both of these teams, the reason they've been relevant even on their quote-unquote down years, for the most part in this little window, is because their offensive lines are both very good. I will say this. Both teams had 4 sacks yesterday, so Detroit still found some way to get some pressure. But, just impressive games on both sides. Detroit is just so well-balanced offensively. I'm taking nothing away from Aaron Jones. Obviously, nothing away from Justin Jefferson, who is still likely, the alpha receiver in football. I mean, there's so much good talent out there as well. Nothing against Jordan Addison, Josh Naylor, and the rest of the receiving corps here. But you look at Detroit, it's like, well, who's going to get you today? Is it Amon-Ra? Jamison Williams, what if I told you he had less than 0 receiving yards yesterday on a single target? Sam Laporta, 2 total targets. I mean, it's an Amon-Ra game. It's a Jahmyr Gibbs game. Next week it could be a totally different story where Jamison Williams hits the over the top. Just so many weapons there in Detroit, and it's fun. It's fun to watch them play football, especially with their play action shot game when they get that going as well. We played the Are You Worried game like 4 weeks ago about tight ends, and so far, knock on wood, Travis Kelce, except for this week, was pretty good since then. I know it was kind of process of elimination because nobody was left, but he started getting some volume and making some plays. Mark Andrews has been fine, looking pretty good on the box score. He's been fine for his role and his appropriate price on DraftKings.
Right.
He's been fine. He's been good.
Excellent point. And
Kyle Pitts. Maybe
I told you.
Maybe we're speaking things into existence because I know there's plenty of people out there, depending on what best ball format you were drafting in. If you were on FFPC and you're getting 1.5 per tight end reception, I know damn well there's some of you that are taking Sam Laporta at like 112 or 2.1 or 2.2. And this man has been completely irrelevant and one of the best offenses in football. And I need to know your opinion on that, Chief. Should we be worried? And how much? It's not even a should we be worried. It's how much are you worried at this point? Because we're all worried a little bit here.
I think there will be some games. I just don't think I think you're going to have to ride the roller coaster. And I feel like that about most of these tight ends this season, which has been very interesting. Now, one of the things that I talked about, I'm going back to Kyle Pitts for a second, is the Atlanta offense just kind of had to take off, in my opinion. Now, yesterday, there was no flight in this offense, and he still put up numbers, right? What did he have? I don't know. 7 catches for 95 yards, 85, whatever it was. I can't remember the specifics, but he was pretty productive considering they only scored 14 points, and I don't think he scored a touchdown. Imagine when it all comes together for him. I feel like Laporta's in the same category, Luke, with the exception of Detroit I don't feel like Detroit has as many weapons on paper as Atlanta does. Like, if you look at Atlanta, they've really got several weapons. So they've got London, they've got Mooney, Ray McLeod has emerged as like their true number 3. They've got Pitts, they've got Bijan, they've got Algier. Like, those are their weapons on offense in terms of, skill position players. You go to Detroit and you really feel like Laporta should be getting a lot more volume. Amon-Ra hasn't seen like 12 targets a game most games, Luke. Jamison Williams isn't hogging up a lot of it. So what's actually happening? You talked about the score yesterday. How many times did Jared Goff throw the ball, Luke? Was it 25 times?
Give or take.
They're not getting enough passing volume for him to be relevant when your main receiver is probably going to take up 25 to 30%. So if you're throwing it 25 to 30 times a game, you got to think Amon-Ra is going to get 8 to 10 of those targets. Jamison Williams has got to get, his 4 to 6 targets with upside for 8 in the right situation. They're giving Khalif Raymond a few targets now. Tim Patrick, isn't he getting a few targets here and there? They're going to give Jahmyr Gibbs a few targets. So, I don't know if this offense is humming with enough passing volume despite the fact, Luce, they just keep scoring points. I just don't know if there's enough volume for Laporta to get there, but I still think there are going to be some weeks where he has a 2-touchdown game. It's just not going to be as consistent as it was last season.
You look at that Atlanta game, and that was one team that disappointed me in terms of fantasy output. But, Cousins threw the ball 35 times. He only had 232 yards there. So, credit to Seattle's defense. They're a heavy zone cover 3 team, and they just had Kirk Cousins' number yesterday. We saw another productive day from Bijan on the ground, who had 21 carries, and that was another quote-unquote smash spot, if you will, for him, and I'm glad that he produced. But, Pitts, London, and Mooney saw the volume. 9 targets for Pitts, 8 for London, and 8 for your boy Mooney, and 6.6 yards per attempt for Kirk Cousins. It's just not going to get it done for fantasy purposes, and Atlanta ran 71 plays. That's almost 20 more than Minnesota did. So, the opportunity was there for Atlanta to hang a bigger number, and they just couldn't really get it done.
Yeah, it just didn't come together. It really didn't. But like you said, another massive win for Seattle, who it's not like they had an offensive explosion of their own, but Kenneth Walker was more than good enough on his birthday, by the way. 4.9 yards per carry on the ground. He scored twice. DK Metcalf had a big play. So Seattle was able to hang a big number. Their quarterback threw for 270 yards. Their leading rusher had 69, and their leading receiver didn't even crack 100. And boom, you got 34 points on the board for Seattle. Thoughts on Atlanta? Who is this Falcons team? I mean, we know we want them to be this team, this electric team. They play their home games in a dome. They have all this firepower. We see them hang a monster number on Tampa Bay a couple of weeks ago. Tampa Bay might be historically bad defensively. We'll find out more on Monday Night Football for sure when Baltimore comes to town in Florida. But what's your synopsis of Atlanta right now? Who are they? Who are the Falcons? Well, I think they're a team that's trying to figure out how to win consistently, Luch, and trying to figure out how they can get this team into the playoffs. Here's why I say that. When you go out and you pick up Kirk Cousins and you pay him all this money knowing he's coming off an Achilles injury, what I think essentially what you're saying, Luch, is, hey, we're a quarterback away from being very competitive. And look, if you look at this season, Luch, I'm not going to down this team. I mean, they're 4-3, on the season, and they could easily be 5-2. So I think Atlanta's fine. Like, clearly, they're not going to be a team that's undefeated, but through the first third of the season, mostly they're above a 500 team. And Luch, this is probably. What do you think? This is a 10-7, 11-6 team. Like, that's probably, who they are. I think they win 10 games here. And, you
got the Panthers again. No offense, but you got the Panthers again.
Yeah.
Who knows what kind of condition the Saints. Talk about injuries, the Saints. Man, yeah. I know we were real quick to pull the trigger on Clint Kubiak fixing this thing. I know he can't control who gets hurt and who doesn't. But B, right. I mean, context matters. They mopped up Dallas, who has a ton of problems, and they mopped up Carolina. And guess that goes to show you that pre-snap motion and things like that aren't going to fix everything. If you just don't have the talent or the health, then, you're going to be in trouble. And just a shame for Rashid Shaheed. Big Rashid Shaheed, man. I mean, this guy was borderline turning into a bona fide wide receiver too, you know? Like Jameson Williams type splash plays, dynamic punt returner, and man, can the Saints catch a break in that NFC South?
But Luch, here's the thing: I look at the Saints and I say, losing those games back to back, like it's hurt them. But they've also had a rookie quarterback for and not like a first round rookie quarterback, Spencer Rattler, who wasn't an elite college player at Oklahoma, obviously went down to South Carolina and played a lot better. But Luch, let's look at the losses the Saints have. They only lost to the Eagles by 3, 15-12. Like, so and then they lost to the Falcons 26-24. My point is they could easily have won 1 to 2 more games, even outside of the Derek Carr injury, and still be in the thick of it. So I don't want to quite write Kubiak off, Luch, because I do think, they scored 24 points against the Falcons, only scored 13 against the Chiefs, only 27 against the Buccaneers, but clearly Spencer Rattler was playing that game. And they got out to a pretty good start in that game. It's just the Buccaneers just came storming back and ran away with it quickly. So once again, do I think the Saints are going to win the NFC South or get in the playoffs? Probably not. But I do think, if they were healthy, to finish out some of these games, maybe we see a slightly different outcome for them. All in all, though, NFC South, it's the Falcons, it's the Buccaneers, and they're both probably going to the playoffs, barring some major injuries.
Listen, I know you mentioned the Eagles. The Eagles are just perennial slow starters this year. Jalen Hurts still has his turnover woes. I don't know if that's going to catch up to him. I don't know where to blame. And I'm like crapping on the Eagles in a 28-3 win over the Giants. I am. But that was one of the games I paid pretty close attention to, at least for the first half. Do you know how many points the Eagles have scored in the first quarter this year?
I'm going to go out on a limb since you're asking me and say I'm going to give you a lowball number, 21.
I have to double check. I'm pretty sure it's 0. No, hold on. Let's see. The Eagles, through the first 5 games, what game number is that for the Eagles? That was 6, correct? Mm-hmm. They had 6 in a bye week. Yeah. So through the first 5 games, they were the 4th team in the last 15 years to go scoreless in the first quarter in their first 5 games. They went scoreless yesterday again in the first quarter. That's hard to believe. They put up some decent numbers the rest of the way. That was an NBC Sports Philly article. I just had to make sure that was right. But
yeah,
listen, no disrespect to the Giants. They've had some moments. They've been fun. I know they played the Bengals tough a couple of weeks ago. The Bengals are a team who are very one-dimensional at the moment. Philly should have mopped this Giants team from the beginning, I think. And eventually they got it going, but your big-time, big paycheck quarterback who has A.J. Brown, who is arguably a top 3 receiver in the NFL. You have Devontae Smith on the other side. You have Mr. Barkley, who had himself a game. Barely cracks 100 passing yards. And trust me, I'm in the Northeast here. I flip on Philly Talk Radio once in a while. I think Eagles fans are about as unhappy after a 28-3 win as they could be. They're going to have to play a full 4 quarters eventually against a really quality team. But hey, cap off, Saquon Barkley absolutely went ballistic. And if he was on any other team that didn't run the stupid tush push inside the 2-yard line, he probably would have had a hat trick of touchdowns yesterday. I know many people are betting the narrative against the Giants like crazy. But still, $176 in a score. Barkley, huge game. A.J. Brown had 89 of those 114 passing yards that Jalen Hurts threw yesterday. So A.J. Brown, again, has stepped right in and just changed the dynamic of this Philadelphia team.
Yeah. Now, Luke, so let's talk through this because I'm going to talk about fandom for a second, and I know we got to move on to look ahead. But here's my question to you in terms of fandom. So the Chiefs win 28-18, and Patrick Mahomes only throws for 150-ish, roughly, and nobody's complaining. Meanwhile, the Eagles win 28-3 and clearly, look, I'm not saying 114 passing yards in a 4-quarter NFL football game for an offense that's supposed to be high-powered is like elite, but Eagles fans are about to have a meltdown about this.
You thought I was just cracking a beer for that one. I promise you it was not.
In a 28-3 win. And so at the end of the day, you still got to win these games. And last season, Luch, as we got down to the end of the season, the Eagles weren't winning these games. So I guess my question is, which one would you prefer? Would you prefer to look good and lose and clearly I think we all want to look efficient and win, but the name of the game is they got to keep stacking W's in the win column, and they got another one yesterday, and the Chiefs didn't look great either, but Chiefs fans are glad to keep tacking on W's and see this team go 6-0, 7-0, 8-0 right into the playoffs. Like I think I'm kind of trying to be big brother here and say, hey, let's take it easy on the Eagles until they actually flame out. But
the hardest, the biggest critics of the Eagles.
Last thing, and I'm done. What if I told you Patrick Mahomes has an interception in 6 straight games, but no one's bringing up his turnover problem?
Buddy, he doesn't have A.J. Brown. He doesn't have Devontae Smith. He doesn't have Saquon Barkley. He doesn't have the offensive line that the Eagles do. And I don't know if that's more of an indictment of Jalen Hurts. I mean, I have Philly I have intelligent Philly fans that are texting me saying, if A.J. Brown wasn't bailing out Jalen Hurts on these deep balls, we'd be having some serious conversations. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. But you're stuck with Jalen Hurts, whether you like it or not, for the foreseeable future. Listen, they won by 25. And you look at the Eagles' schedule. They have the Jaguars in a couple of weeks. They have Cincinnati on the road next week, who they should beat, but it's very possible that the Eagles just aren't as good as they are on paper, and I think that's the case. And by the way, I'm excited for our look ahead because that game is screaming points, or you would think at least Cincinnati could put the pressure on Philly to, let's see what you got, like air this thing out a little bit. You got Dallas in a couple of weeks, and then the Commanders in mid-November on prime time. The Eagles have three games, in my opinion, that I think we're going to really see what they're made of, for lack of for an X's and O's terminology. They have the Commanders at home. They're at Baltimore on December 1st, and then Pittsburgh comes to town on December 15th. And, the Ravens and the Steelers are two teams that are just going to hit you. They're just going to hit you. And they play ugly, tough football. And I'm most interested to see, how Philly does against those teams. And we will get some answers at some point, and we'll see. We'll see if we blame Kellen Moore or Jalen Hurts, or we'll see if Nick Sirianni, at least survives the end of the season. But anyway, yeah. I'm saying you put on FM radio here in the Northeast, you wouldn't know that the Eagles won 2 games in a row. You would have no idea. You would have absolutely no clue. Anyway, they won by 25, guys, so it is what it is, and they didn't really have to do much in the second half. I think the bigger news for fantasy purposes in that game is Devin Singletary came back. Maybe this was a perfect scapegoat for them to kind of phase him out a little bit, because Tyrone Tracy, who was spectacular, played 2/3 of the snaps in that game. And let's be real, he's the dynamic guy in that backfield. Is how much do you want to put on his plate already? The team's 2-5. I say his workload should only increase or at least stay the same through the rest of the year.
Yeah, for sure. And look, man, I always talk about Devin Singletary because in college, man, he was a beast at FAU, and I think he's had a respectable NFL career also. Yeah. He had a pretty good season last year with the Texans. It's just, now he's kind of bouncing around, and like you said, Tracy has been dynamic for sure. I do think maybe this thing gets to a little bit more of a split. As he gets, more healthy as they progress, hopefully. Maybe we see a little bit more 50-50. And if so, it's almost as if they're going to cancel each other out if they both stay the same price as they were yesterday, because you won't really be able to play either one of them. But still, I totally get it. I think both of them were around 6K yesterday on FanDuel. Is that what it was? I think they were both around 6K, or either that was DraftKings. One of the two. They were both about the same price, and I kind of ended up just not playing either one of them. But I'm with you. Tracy's dynamic. I do think he gets a few more touches as the season progresses. But if they continue to lose, then by the end of the season, they have no reason to run, a veteran running back out there. They can see what they got in their young guy.
A couple other guys who were cooking in terms of opportunities. A.J. Brown, 70.4% of the Eagles' air yards yesterday. George Pickens.
Which isn't saying much.
Right? But he had almost all of them, damn it.
Yeah.
George Pickens, here we go, 70% of the team's air yards, which kind of, is extremely high. It led the NFL. 31% target share yesterday. 2/3 of his targets were catchable. So that's all good news for George Pickens' owner against the Jets. Nice little secondary. Good news for George Pickens is Russell Wilson. It doesn't matter how you feel about Russell Wilson in terms of season outlook. If you're a George Pickens fantasy owner, You want Russ in there, most likely. Look what he did with Cortland Sutton last year, Chief. We talked about Cortland Sutton quite a bit.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a perfect comparison, Luke, believe it or not. I love that call of comparing to Cortland Sutton in terms of a Russell Wilson pairing at quarterback. I think that's a great analysis there. And if this continues, then George Pickens is going to be extremely fantasy relevant. Let's just hope his price doesn't get out of control for a few weeks and we can actually still continue to play him.
So Malik Neighbors came back, kind of a disappointing stat line. He had 40-some yards at halftime, 8 targets. Brian Daboll said that Malik was open, basically, and kind of maybe that's a shot to Daniel Jones, who did get benched. Now, I'm not quite sure. Maybe it's a little ambiguous whether he was benched because of the blowout or if they're just saying, hey, let's see if Drew Lock can do something and turn the ship around. I don't know. But Drew Lock likes to sling it, and Malik Neighbors stepped in and it was still the alpha, 55% air yard share, ranked 7th in the NFL yesterday. T. Higgins, I mean, what a year. This guy's balling out on his franchise tag. 49% air yard share yesterday, 32% target share. Boy, oh boy, Higgins and Jamar Chase against the Eagles next week. Probably going to be a lot of chatter about that game this week, no matter what RotoGrinders or DFS platform or site you tune into. There'll be a lot of Bengals-Eagles talk as well. And one more guy that I do want to mention here. I mean, there's a million talking points here, but I know we want to skip over that London game, but I want to hit on that real quick. And Brian Thomas, just such an impressive rookie campaign so far. Yesterday in London yesterday, had 46% of the team's air yard share, 25% target share. And he is a solidified kind of wide receiver 2 type player in fantasy. It seems a little uncomfortable. Maybe the floor is a little bit low, but they should have some trailing game scripts. And Brian Thomas, I think, the physical tools, etc., is the best receiver on that Jaguars team. And that's not a shot at Christian Kirk. I think he's fine. But I think Brian Thomas, career outlook wise, etc., just has a really high ceiling. So it's cool to see the LSU product balling out there a little bit in Jacksonville. And on the flip side, you want to talk about a trailing game script. We saw New England just get decked early on, and it's Drake May, and that's fine. But Drake May for fantasy was pretty good. He might not see the wins in the box score, but I'm getting like the Blake Bortles vibes going on here, where things might not be pretty in real life for football purposes. But if he's going to be slinging the ball maybe 40 times a game, every other game, and he has some rushing upside for sure, Drake May is a little bit interesting for DFS. Here we are.
Yeah, Drake May is going to be interesting for best ball too. Listen, we're going to have to get buying for on this thing before we close out. As we kind of get to the midway point, here's why I'm bringing that up. If you listen to Buying For and some of the stuff they had going on at Spike Week earlier as we got closer to the season, one of the things Buying For started talking about, Luch, was picking up some of those Drake May shares, picking up some of those Bo Nix shares, because he figured all the rookies would get unleashed by the end of the season, and being able to have them stockpiles for some of those later games where maybe they're playing a team that's already in, and those guys can kind of pile up some numbers for the playoffs of your best ball team. So I'm saying that to say, clearly we see that Drake May is going to be a better fantasy producer than Jacoby Brissett right now. And even though he didn't really take off for a whole lot of yards yesterday on the ground, he has shown the ability to take 3 or 4 rushes a game, Luch, if they present the opportunity to get out of trouble. So I'm fine with May, and I definitely think, moving forward from a fantasy perspective, if he can continue to stay cheap, there may be some matchups that we can utilize to get him in your lineups.
What do you say we start taking a look at some of this DFS pricing? And
for sure.
Some of the games that we are eyeballing here. So I'm opening up pricing for the first time for next week's game. Let me get the Vegas totals up here using scoresandodds.com. And boy, good to see NBA on the home screen. Can't wait for opening night tomorrow. And
I will say, Luch, we're kind of back to, let's call it a normal size schedule. So we've been at 10 games for the main slate for the past 3 weeks, I think, because of all the bye weeks. We've been at 10 games. We got 13 this week. So this slate is going to feel a little bit bigger, right? We're going to have a few more options this week than we have the past 3 weeks, which is good for us. Could definitely help us make some better decisions. And we've got the Mega Million this week on DraftKings. If you've got $4,444 to invest, you could be a millionaire competing against 634 other entrants, including yourself. So I think that's a big deal this week. Also, obviously, that's a really high stakes contest, but it is available if you've got the bankroll to do it.
Lions, Titans, 45.5 total. Detroit is 11-point favorites. Listen, L'Jarius Sneed didn't play last week. It might be that time of the year already where they might be putting some guys on the block or seeing some young guys get some action. And just off of first look here, the Titans defense has been pretty good the first couple of weeks, but their offense can't sustain drives. They're a funnel defense. You have Tavondre Sweat up front, who's still good at football, and Jeffrey Simmons. Their two best defenders who are healthy right now are defensive linemen. Man, I can foresee Amon-Ra or Jameson Williams being a focal point of some tournament builds against this Titans team. But I know we're going position by position usually. I'm just looking at the couple games with some high totals. The Lions will project well. They'll have a very high team total. Packers, Jaguars. We just talked a lot about the NFC North. Jacksonville coming back from a 2-week stint in the UK. I bet you they kind of wish they had a little bit of a bye week going on. That it would have been nice for them, but they've just been getting forced all season.
They should have put a bye week on them coming back from 2 weeks. I would have. They got to talk to the league about that, Luch. Build that schedule a little better for them.
So you're going to throw me over there for 2 weeks. Give us a break when we come home. I mean, that's a bit of an adjustment period. It's, you're over there for 2 weeks. Yeah, I don't know, but maybe there's some more merit to even, to rostering some more Packers. And Rich Herbar on Lord Reeves, our guy Lord Reeves over there on Twitter. Great follow, by the way. He tweeted out earlier today that every quarterback to face the Jaguars has scored more points in that game than they had averaged entering the matchup this year. So I'm not surprised, but hello, Jordan Love. The problem with Jordan Love is he loves spreading the ball around, which is awesome. So maybe it's like a double stack situation and hope you hit the two receivers that have the big day or maybe the Tucker Craft, if you will, there. So a couple more games with a lot of points, Chief. I'll run down. The Texans. We didn't talk Texans. CJ Stroud, I think, at 86 passing yards, by the way, in that loss to Green Bay.
Rough day for him at the office. Rough day.
Well, they'll get a bunch of cover 3 in the Indianapolis Colts. They're 6-point favorites, 46 game total there. So pretty healthy team total for Houston. Cardinals on a short week. They're going to Miami. Are we going to see Tua? I don't know. That could be a big key cog to the slate, whether or not we get Tua.
Yeah.
Falcons, Buccaneers short week. Good. Yeah, we'll have to see. Jury's still out. Stay tuned, RotoGrinders, this week for some more news. And I'm sure he'll be a big talking point moving forward. Falcons at Tampa Bay, short week for the Bucs. Pretty high total there. We've talked about it's possible that the Bucs are a really, really bad pass defense. So maybe it's an opportunity for those Falcons receivers to get going. Don't know if it's the Drake May week that you want against the Jets. We'll see. But Bengals, Eagles, 47.5 total. Thought maybe that thing would be pushing 50. But Bengals are 3-point favorites at home. And last week, the Eagles-Giants game was a 43.5 total, which historically in the last couple of years, that total might have been a couple points higher, but might be a slight indictment on the Eagles' struggles, at least in the first half of football games this year. But you got the Eagles, Bengals, and of course, Bills, Seattle. Another real interesting game there in terms of points. So I covered most of the ground there. We'll see what Jaden Daniels' story is. It seems like he's okay. Who knows if he'll play? They got the Bears. I mean, I'm sure everyone wants to get their popcorn ready to see Jaden Daniels and Caleb Williams.
I mean, I think this is probably one of the more intriguing games of the week. Now, Luch, I do think Falcons Buccaneers, like to me that game is about to decide the division right now, in my opinion, because they've already played each other. You see what I'm saying? So. Yep. To me, this game is deciding the division. If the Falcons win this game, Luch, I think they win the division because they've already won. I think they've already won once. Yeah, they beat the Buccaneers 26-24, didn't they? Is that what happened? I think that's what happened. So if they – or did they lose 26-24? Let me fact check that, Luch. I don't want to mess that up because I do think that's a huge, huge deal. No. Falcons won 36-30. Excuse me. Falcons won 36-30 at home, and now they're going to the Buccaneers. So the Falcons can pull this one off. Essentially, what I think we're saying is they've won the division, because I don't expect the Panthers to beat them. And if the Saints are down, I don't expect the Saints to beat them either. You get what I'm saying, Luke? So unless the Falcons just lose outside of the division, I think that's the case. So I think this is the big game of the week, in my opinion. Like this is the big game of the week for me.
Yeah, I mean, in real life and for fantasy purposes as well, I think it's a nice little get right spot for Atlanta, and I mean they're all.
But Bears Commanders most intriguing because of the two young quarterbacks, and both teams are above 500, winning comfortably.
Yeah, CJ Stroud. I know he's cracked. He's cracked 21 fantasy points once this season. You know what? I mean, I'm just gonna keep penciling in Joe Mixon, regardless of the price tag. I mean, he only played a little over 2/3 of the snaps, still had 25 carries, even in his first game back against New England.
Big week. Has a chance for another big week this week against the Colts.
I mean, I think that's the move there. I know we're hopping around a little bit, but you got Josh Allen against Seattle. He's 7,800. Jalen Hurts 7,500 against Cincy. Jordan Love 7,100, priced pretty appropriately against that Jacksonville defense as well. Jared Goff 6,600. You just don't know what that Titans defense is going to give you. I think there's a shot that that Detroit stack could do some serious damage. Caleb Williams cheap against Washington, 6K. Kirk Cousins probably draw some ownership again after he threw for 5 Bills against Tampa Bay. That was that Thursday night football game earlier in the month. And, good price there for him as well. Geno Smith, 5,900 against Buffalo. I think maybe Seattle.
Geno's been cheap all year.
Yeah.
That's the thing. Like, Geno's been really affordable.
We can't sit here and say that Bills defense are world beaters. I mean, every team that's played the Titans, pretty much, their defenses look fantastic, but the Titans have half of an offensive line and no quarterback play. So Bills traveling across the country. You talked about it on Crunch Time. Some of those teams tend to come out a little lethargic in the first quarter, first half, and maybe there's a chance that DK and Geno have a little bit of a day against the Bills, and there could be some points for sure in that game, Chief.
Yeah, so let me share this with you, Luch. Geno's only cracked over 6K once this season. So out of all the games he's played, he's been over 6K once, and he was 6,100. So it's not like he was pushing 65, 66. So Geno really, to me, has been a value quarterback all year, and I think it's another spot where he could have some value again at 5,900 this week as we lead into it. First look, I definitely like Geno. Now, like I said, I do like this Buccaneers Falcons game quite a bit as we lead off from an overall competitive standpoint. Clearly, we think there are certain games that are lopsided, Luch, that we could still get some exposure to some of these offenses. But Falcons Bucks for me in terms of just overall production. But I like Geno here at 5,900 as we kind of
DK Metcalf continues to be underpriced.
Yeah, he was 6,800 last week.
60 is down. It's down to 65 this week against Buffalo.
Yeah.
Mike McDonald said that Metcalf banged his knee a little bit during the win. He did exit that game in the fourth quarter. We'll have to see, what kind of practices that he logs. But hypothetically, if Metcalf plays, I like him as long as he gets a full practice Friday would make me feel pretty good about it. Full practice Thursday, whatever. I'll say if not, maybe JSN becomes a little bit of a commodity as we inch closer to the week. But I mean, come on, this guy should be a 7K receiver on any slate. He's just buried. So I think, that's a pretty cheap little duo you can get there. And, big slate, you don't have to force a run back in that game stack. In my opinion, there's a lot of ways you can go, but yeah, I think the Seattle's kind of interesting. What else is catching your eye so far here, Chief? I mean, what do you do with Green Bay, if anything? And it looks like Jaden Reed, there's some speculation that maybe he didn't look like himself after he kind of practiced through a little bit of an ankle thing all week. Pretty much was MIA completely on Sunday and the big win. But how do you play, a quarterback like that against a defense who's been getting shredded? Again, getting shredded and no rest between a 2-week vacation, if you will, across the pond. What do you do with Green Bay?
I think you just keep, if you feel like you spread it around, I think for all intents and purposes, we still feel like Jaden Reed is his de facto number one. But Luke, the way I like to build, especially when I feel like I'm going to attack a team, and I've talked about this on several shows like in the past, but I'll typically do this. If you really like Jordan Love this week and you're not quite sure where the production is coming from, you take Jordan Love and you pair him with Jaden Reed. Then you take Jordan Love, you pair him with Dontayvion Wicks. You take Jordan Love, you pair him with Watson. You take Jordan Love, you pair him with Kraft. And then you kind of repeat that process on some of your double stacks. So you'll say Watson, Reed, Wicks, Watson, Reed, Dobbs, Watson, Reed. I'm saying Watson, but I mean Love, Reed, Watson, Love, Reed, Dobbs, Love, Reed, Wicks, Love, Reed, Kraft. Then you go back, Love, Dobbs, Wicks, Love, Dobbs, Watson. And so the reason you build it that way, and I typically hand build those lineups, Luke, the reason I build it that way is because I'm trying to get a certain number of combinations to whereas I don't miss the production. And that's how I think you take a quarterback like him that has multiple receivers that could get there. You build it that way. Or any quarterback that's going to be pushing it down the field. Now, the one quarterback I don't typically do that with is Lamar Jackson. I barely run him with Zay Flowers. I just run him naked most of the time. But quarterbacks that are going to spread it around like him, like Kirk Cousins, like Sam Darnold, quarterbacks of that nature, you want to try to capture all the upside that you can, and that's how I typically build.
Here's the whole pendulum of the slate. It's going to swing one way or the other, and it's going to come down to Tua because they have the Cardinals. And we spent a lot of time on Miami, who largely disappointed outside of Devon A-Chain. But if Tua plays and they have Arizona at home, Tyreek Hill still $7K. Jalen Waddle's $5,400. Jonnu Smith got involved last week.
But here's the thing. If Tua comes back, isn't everyone and their mom going to play the Dolphins because their prices are going to be suppressed?
There's the problem. Fade at your own risk.
I mean, $7K Tyreek and $5,300 Waddle. If Tua comes back, like you talked about in the matchup with the Cardinals, and I've played them with Huntley, so I'm clearly going to just hop on the train and hope that Tua's okay. I really am concerned about Tua's actual health. I know he wants to play, and clearly, if the doctors say he's fine, he's fine. I just think, as a human, we're just tired of seeing them take these big hits, man, and then get up from them, and us have to wonder if he's actually okay.
I mean, I'll go right back to Devon A-Chain again. I know he was pretty disappointing. He played 58% of the snaps. Mostert got some work, but Tua back only helps A-Chain, and his price is down to $6,200. So, maybe there's a chance that he's slightly overlooked. If everyone's going to go to the Miami pass game and really not like full stack, A-Chain in there, I don't know. I mean, his price is amazing. And I'm just waiting for that home run game. I mean, average 5 yards a carry. I know it's Indianapolis, but still, I mean, I'm almost equally interested in A-Chain as much as Tyreek Hill if Tua comes back, if that makes any sense. Just because totally that opens up so much for him. So much.
Yep, totally get it.
So what's your stance on this Cincinnati-Philly game? Is it as appealing to you as it is to me from a first look?
I think it's just okay for me, because the pieces are going to be expensive, right? Like, if you want to play Jamar Chase this week, you're going to have to pay, right? Like, Jamar Chase is $8,500, AJ Brown is $8,200, and right now, Luke, I don't see the value that we typically need to open up getting two of those big spins at receiver. We've made our money in this 5 and 6K range at receiver and some of the lower 7K guys because they've been giving us top tier production. So that's really my concern with this game. And then, how much Saquon do you want to get in? Well, he's $8,300. Then you go and look at quarterback. Now, Burrow's $7K, Hurts is $75. Like, this is an expensive game to get to from a DFS perspective. because both of the number one receivers are 8K plus, both of the quarterbacks are 7K or more, and the top running back is 8K or more. It's going to be tight. It's going to be tight.
It is. And from an projected ownership standpoint, it's Monday. I don't know. I'm guessing, but if Tua plays hypothetically and you get like a 30% number on Tyreek, that will kind of make it a little more appealing to pay up over Tyreek and hope you get that Jamar Chase nuke game. It's Tyreek is 7K.
Tyreek hasn't had a nuke game since Tua went down. You gotta think, and he's probably going to get 10 targets in this game at least. If Tua's back, like even if he's got 8 catches for 80 yards and a touchdown at 7K, Luch, that's 22 points for 7K. Look, it's not a slate breaker. Don't get me wrong. It's not a slate breaker. But, I mean, we're getting close to.
It would be hard for him to really hurt you, like at that price.
Right.
Right. I don't know. The more we're talking it through here, the more I'm thinking I would do that QB running back wide receiver stack. And I mean, they're all cheap. You have 6,200 for A-Chain, who's running slot routes and is basically the team's third receiver. Can sure as hell catch a touchdown from Tua in that game. So I just feel like less people will go Tua, A-Chain, Tyreek. You know what I mean?
Because nobody's going to run the 4-man stack at this rate, Luch. We might as well run the 4-man and see what happens. I'm not kidding. Tua's 5K, H.A. 6,200, Waddle's low 5K, and Tyreek 7K. And any of them, like Tua could easily throw for 250 here. And Tyreek, because you got to think now, Luch, the squeaky wheel is going to get the ball this week. And Jalen Waddle and Tyreek, I think they both got 1 or 2 targets in that game. If you don't think Tua is going to make sure his receivers get back on track, and that's not statistical analysis, that's me being a sports guy, being in a locker room. I've been in a locker room. I know what's going to happen if Tua comes back. These secondary guys can kiss their targets goodbye this week. Tyreek's going back up to double digits, and Jalen Waddle won't be far behind after they've had to suffer with their production over the past couple of weeks. You don't think these guys want their incentive money? Now, they want to win. But see, so Luch, now we're getting to the other stuff, right, of this thing. Tua's got to help these guys get back on track for the incentives if they want to hit them. I rest my case. I'll stop right there because that's getting us in the weeds. But that stuff gets important as we start going through the season.
Yeah, I mean, just thinking about playing some like low dollar, large field stuff. I mean, because Jamar Chase against the Eagles secondary. I mean, it's a great matchup. Amon-Ra. Huge team total against maybe a Titan secondary without L'Jarius Sneed and Cheeto's still in IR. So you're rolling out Jarvis Brownlee, who was a 5th round pick, and a couple other guys who don't matter at all. I mean, Amon-Ra could light it up. AJ Brown in that Cincy game. I mean, that Bengals defense is bad, and AJ Brown's been phenomenal in every game he's been healthy. So even Drake London against Tampa Bay, in that potential future division deciding contest. Drake London, tons of volume, 7,200. I'm thinking maybe people go Tyreek and London together, kind of in that mid-range there, and maybe try to pair them together. Or I could be wrong, but just a loaded slate of receivers with Tyreek and Miami probably being the focal point of everyone's decision-making this week. You have a huge slate, and it comes down to what you do with one team pretty much, if Tua plays. So
yeah, absolutely.
There's that.
Absolutely.
Anything else you want to add on here before we start wrapping up?
Negative. I am good to go, man. I think it's going to be an interesting week. Glad these extra 3 games are going to help us. Should make the slate feel a lot more fun because the slates have. It's like when you start playing, which you can't feel when it's 10 games. You see it in your lineup builder. You see it in the options you have. So getting those extra games, I think, is going to be super important for us. So definitely excited about it.
Who's your favorite quarterback? Now we rattled off all these guys. I mean, Geno and Tua, so cheap. I think they're just so interesting. But of course, Kirk Cousins and that smash by Jordan Love as well. On Monday, who's your favorite guy right now?
I think if I had to take one right now, high end for me, I think it's Jordan Love. Low end, if Tua plays, it's Tua. followed by Geno Smith at home against the Bills.
Yeah, I don't mind that at all. And I think if I'm adding an honorable mention as to a guy who probably no one's going to play is Jared Goff, probably.
Gotcha.
At home against Tennessee, and I think they'll roll. Man, Goff.
And as I'm saying this, I'm feeling so terrible that we're overlooking C.J. Stroud, who's probably going to have a nuclear game itself this week after that poor performance last week against the Packers.
Yeah, a lot of ways to go. It should be an interesting week as we lead closer to Sunday. You got anything for GPP food of the day or story time?
Yeah, definitely have something for GPP food of the day, and it's actually in regards to a sauce. So where we live, I live near the coast, Luch, and so we have a plethora of places you can go to get good seafood. But I gotta say, man, we have a spot here in a neighboring county next to us, and we got to go 30 minutes to get this thing, Luch. But it's called the King's Sauce, and that's the name of his sauce. But it's also that's his sauce name, but he serves food there also. And for those of you that know what crab boils are, you can get crab legs, sausage, potatoes, corn,
Nice.
stuff like that. It's kind of not a stew, but like a boil. They call it a crab boil. You get that, you put it in the bag, and you can get all kinds. But he does it with this special King sauce. I gotta say, Luch, incredible stuff, man. We got some King sauce here at the house. And so just wanted to give him a shout out, and that's our GPP food of the day, the King's Sauce.
I was at a chili festival cook-off kind of thing on Saturday. I live next to a city with probably 100,000 people in it, kind of a small little city. I don't even consider it a city technically. I don't know what the actual cutoff is. Anyway. There was 14 restaurants / bars within a nice walking zone, maybe a mile and a half or so, that you kind of get your ticket, and then for 4 hours you either go inside and they had a table set up, or they were outside, and they all made chili. And at the end of the thing, you kind of you pick wherever you want to go, but you make your little path around and you vote for a winner. And there were some official judges that voted for their winner. And I'm not a big chili connoisseur, but I like good chili, I guess. I never really grew up eating it, but it was really cool because there was so many different kind of chilies. Some had actual pulled pork in it. A couple people made chicken. There was an Asian noodle place that made their own rendition and had chili with a bit of wasabi in it. There's vegetarian chili. There's all kinds of stuff. It was really cool. So that was something different for me. I'm curious if you're a chili guy or what your go-to is. But for me, I will say that was a busy day. It was cool. I ate probably the equivalent of 2.5 bowls of chili, which was so much. And then the Yankees played the ALCS. So of course I snuck some beers in there and maybe a little Casamigos. And let me tell you, my body just doesn't take that kind of abuse like it did 15 years ago. Between the chili and the booze, man, I just ate an unethical amount of chili and feeling it a little bit Saturday night. But there was Pepto-Bismol to be had, and boy, what a baseball season it's been. And we'll have the Yankees Dodgers, so we'll see what happens this week. But do you like chili, Chief? What's your chili take?
I do. I like white chili too, man. When you get some good chicken and a nice cream sauce and white beans. Oh yeah, I like a good white chili. Also, my wife makes a good chili. She does it with some cornbread. Oh my goodness, I'm getting excited.
Oh, yeah.
Just thinking about it. That's more of a red chili, obviously. Beef hamburger based. Beef based and stuff like that. But yeah, I love chili, man. Now I'm okay with spicy chili. I like more of a sweet and spicy chili myself, Luke. I like how they those flavors complement each other in a chili. That does my body good.
Oh, I like that. Now it's getting colder out. We're getting into the heart of football season. Game day chili sounds a little more appealing. I'm good on
that. A beef stew in the refrigerator because I made a beef stew also. I made a nice little beef stew last week. My wife said, "Oh man, this is fantastic." She loved it. Had some celery, onions, potatoes, carrots. I even put mushrooms in this one, Luke, to thicken up that gravy a little bit as we got the gravy going. So, that was something that was good for us last week. That meat was so tender, man. I mean, it was just falling apart. So, I see our producer Steve said soup season, and it is soup season. Speaking of soup, my favorite is broccoli and cheddar. I know we got a guy here. That's my soup, GPP soup of the day. Give me a nice broccoli and cheddar.
Now here's my thing. Is chili a soup? And I'm saying that half jokingly, but not really. But I remember, speaking of best ball and our guy, Mr. Rob Coakley, and what didn't he tweet? Is chili a soup, or what they were talking about something, or clam chowder? Maybe producer Steve knows. I think they were debating like if chowder was a soup or whatever. Chili's soupy, but is chili a soup? I don't think chili is a soup, but I don't know if you can consider chili soup.
Chili to me is more like a stew than a soup.
Stew, yeah, it's more.
No, it's not like considered a stew, but you've got beans in there, you've got meat in there, you probably got onions and peppers, and it's thick, it's chunky, it's more a little bit more of a stew to me than a soup.
It's like a hot dog, a sandwich kind of conversation, you know?
Right. To me, a soup is going to be a little bit more brothy. If it's going to be a little bit more broth based. I know chowder and stuff is a little bit more creamy, broth or cream. But typically, when you're talking about stews, you're getting chunks of meat, with vegetables and other things. So, at any rate, there you have it.
If we're talking soup, my go-to soup is French onion. I like a good crock of French onion soup. That's maybe not the healthiest, but give me the cheese and the bread, baby. Give me all of that. I'm in for some French onion.
Absolutely.
It was good to have a good actual food for thought conversation.
Yes.
To close it out.
For sure. That's throwback for us. Obviously, we've had to kind of try to get out of here the past couple of weeks, but be able to simmer down as the weather gets a little cooler. See what we did there, Luke? Simmer down and talk about some soups. That's how we made our name in this business with this show, from the NBA days. So those were good times. Folks, go out and get you some broccoli and cheddar or some French onion or maybe a clam chowder and continue to hang out with us every week.
Absolutely. Well, here in Pennsylvania, it's pushing 80 degrees a day. It's going to be like 50 again in 2 days. So bring on the tissues and the Afrin because, soup and sick season is knocking on the door. So plan accordingly, folks. And listen, NBA is here. Make sure you're sticking with RotoGrinders. We got you covered for just about everything. I can't wait for opening tip-off on Tuesday. So busy week as usual. You can find my guy Will here, Chief Justice 06 on Twitter. You can hit me up at the J Carlucci. Big shout out to our guy here, producer Steve, who's got a lot going on behind the scenes. So without further ado, we are going to head out of here. So for my guy Steve and Chief, I'm the Luch. See you next week and have a good week, everybody.